Hi, and welcome to our online session. This is how I've been teaching for the whole semester my social and political philosophy class. So it's really weird to be here in my office sitting by my computer recording all of this, knowing that you guys are going to listen to it wherever you are. So, anyway, informal fallacies is probably one of my favorite topics, and I'm kind of sad that the introduction is going to be done this way. But I'm glad that we're going to get to discuss what you guys use from informal fallacies in your exam and how you get to use it for the fifth reflection in our class. So I'm looking forward to your examples more than to my explanation of the fallacies. Fallacies are, as we have talked about in class, they are flawed arguments, right? So informal fallacies are a little bit different than the unsound arguments that we have seen. Informal fallacies, which are the kinds of fallacies that we're going to see here, are these unsound arguments that are used by tons of people. I'm sure all of you have used at least seven out of all the fallacies we're going to discuss here on a daily basis, that is. Uh, Fallacies have these really awesome psychological appeal. They sound relevant, they sound pertinent, but we're not really paying attention to the kind of information the fallacy has. So, what makes the fallacy unsound is that although it might move people to do what I want them to do, or it might seem persuasive, it is actually persuading people on the basis of pulling their psychological makeup or using their emotional attachments to work with what I want, right? So again, a fallacy looks like an argument, but they're flawed. Either the premises do not support the conclusion, or the information the argument is presenting is going to be irrelevant. And I'll talk about irrelevant fallacies in a second. So these fallacies, informal fallacies, are going to be divided into three different kinds: fallacies of false generalization, causal fallacies, and fallacies of relevance. Fallacies of false generalization deal with errors that are made by analyzing a sample from which we shouldn't be making a conclusion. So let's say that I had a bad experience when I went to Cleveland, Ohio, right? So whenever somebody tells me, "Oh, I'm going to go to Cleveland, Ohio," I'm going to be like, "Oh, you don't want to be there. Just be prepared because people in Cleveland, you don't have an idea," right? My sample is too small. I was in Cleveland, Ohio once. And based on that, I think that everyone is going to have the same sort of experience that I had. We also have causal fallacies. And you must remember here the discussion that we had when we were talking about chapter 8 and the different kinds of relationships there are. Relations there are. Causal fallacies are pseudo arguments that are not clearly establishing a cause and effect relation. And that might be because they confuse the cause and the effect that was created, or because there are contributory causes, but they don't take them into consideration where they're making the point, or because there are interactive causes again, and the person making the quote unquote argument is not paying attention to how all these different causes interact, right? So those are causal fallacies. And then we have fallacies of relevance. That these fallacies of relevance do not really establish any grounds whatsoever that we can trust. Whereas the first two, fallacies of generalization and causal fallacies, make wrong statements. Fallacies of relevance make no statement at all. Remember the one I told you, you're gonna do it because I'm your mother? That's a fallacy of relevance. That doesn't prove anything. Okay? So, we're going to be dealing with these three different kinds of fallacies, and we're going to start analyzing the different kinds of fallacies of false generalization. We're going to talk about three different fallacies of false generalization: hasty generalization, sweeping generalization, and false dilemma. Hasty generalization is the fallacy that's more related to the example that I gave in the beginning. A hasty generalization happens when I have too small of a sample and I apply that sample to a general population. You guys have seen this done. You probably have done it too. When you say things like, my boyfriend cheated on me, all men are trash, right? Yeah, maybe there's something to that statement. I'm just kidding. Uh, we only have one element. We only have one person who cheated on this one woman. We can't generalize from that small sample. If you think about it, a lot of the stereotypes that we use have to do with this sort of hasty generalization. One of the ones that I like is the one that I put here. I was at the store the other day and the cashier did not understand English. I can't understand why immigrants don't just learn English, right? Because you run into one person that hasn't learned English or hasn't fully learned English. People make these claims that no immigrants to the US learn or can learn the language, right? It's not like they have surveyed everyone and everyone happens to not learn English. Is that they found one, two, maybe three people, and based on that, they start generalizing, they start applying that one finding to everybody else, right? So I hope those two examples make clear what hasty generalization is. The sample might be too small, but that doesn't stop us to pull out of it a general claim. Also, as fallacies of generalization, we have this idea of sweeping generalization, which is when one fails to take into account the exceptions to the rule. This is very well done in advertisement when they tell you 8 out of every 10 dentists recommend Trident. They want you to concentrate on all of those who agree, the number that better supports what they want to claim, right? But they don't tell you what the other two said. They don't tell you what the exceptions to that rule are. So a lot of the times we make also these huge claims through which we launch what a lot of us call an umbrella term, right? We apply this umbrella to every category, to every situation, to every, without considering that there might be exceptions to what we're trying to say. So it's just easier to say that everyone does X or that no one likes Y instead of saying, well, yeah, but there were some people who disagree, right? So whenever you see that somebody's pulling what everybody agreed in, what people have in common, and they pay no attention to the exceptions, to the differences, to those numbers that are outside what the survey says, they're pulling a sweeping generalization. And then the last one in this category of fallacies is the false dilemma. Moms use it a lot, right? Professors use it a lot as well. And it's when we give someone just two choices. Either you do it this way or you do it that way. Either it is my way or the highway, right? So what we don't realize when we're using a false dilemma is that there might be additional gray area options that people can have. One of the ones that I really like analyzing is that people have to go to college, because if you don't go to college, you're never going to make a good life. You're not never going to have a good life. And that's sort of a false dilemma, right? Because there are many other ways in which you can make for yourself a good life. And it's not like just by the fact that you're going to college, you're going to have a good life. So, false dilemma is this fallacy that presents us black and white options, and that's all it considers. Right? Either you do it this way or you do it that way, and it leaves no room for creative decisions or for discussions that are in the gray area. Okay? So those three are examples of fallacies of false generalization. In the next bit, I'm going to talk about causal fallacies and fallacies of relevance.